So over in the UK, we're quite keen on watching Elizabeth Warren. I'm not sure whether we have an opinion on her or not, but clearly when we saw Gary Gensler being parachuted in to run the SEC, our ears pricked up to find out more about what his plans were going forward. We've been covering Gary Gensler a lot in our newspaper recently, and he's trying really hard to reform things. The Forbes have some opinions about him, other people have other opinions about him, but sitting here in Texas, where your tax rate is what it is, as in insignificant, how does Gary Gensler and the SEC affect Texas? Is there any kind of effect here? Do you feel the presence of Washington or New York here?
Not as much as you would think. A lot of the industry here is not even regulated by the SEC. By that I mean like Bitcoin mining, for example. They deal with the IRS on tax issues. They deal with ERCOT on energy issues. ERCOT is a state energy regulator and grid operator. But they, since Bitcoin is a commodity, they don't really have to deal with the Securities Exchange Commission. Now, we do have different projects that have gone different ways as a security, like Hedera Hashgraph, which is based in Dallas, is a large layer one, similar to Polygon or
Avalanche.
Avalanche, yeah. So they actually did the compliant way, and they went ahead and did the securities filings and all that stuff, probably a Reg D or something like that. So, and then you have others that are like in this in-between phase, like the Avalanches and the Polygons, who are like, well, we think we're sufficiently distributed to not trip up the Howey test, but we don't know for sure. And then you have a lot of projects that are just closing their eyes and they're just wrong, right? You have a lot of projects that are certainly securities that, will eventually, if they haven't already, be targeted by the SEC, and probably for good reason, because they aren't sufficiently distributed. They do have, this pre-mine that looks like investors pooling money with the expectation of profit, all these Howey test prongs that are being hit. So I can't speculate on which ones those are because I'm not a securities lawyer, but they're out there, and the SEC is starting to take action. I don't love this regulation by enforcement thing that they just, instead of setting out clear guidelines, they just pick on people and just start smashing them down. That's not great. That doesn't help anybody in the U.S. or globally, right? Because these projects are global projects.
Well, we look to the U.S. We all look to the U.S. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just how capital markets works, and it's the same process, isn't it? But on the topic of capital markets, and not to talk about Gary too much, because I'm sure he's getting enough press as it is.
Do you like how I didn't even answer the question about what we think about it? No, I will give you my honest opinion. It's a hot take.
Not on the camera.
I'll give it to you right now.
Okay.
I actually think that other than the regulation by enforcement, Gary Gensler is pretty sharp on these issues and pretty consistent. I'll get some, tomatoes thrown at me by the crypto industry for saying that, because most people really don't appreciate what he's done. And again, I concur with them.
But that's exactly what I was going to ask you, how long you've been in crypto, because I think that makes a massive difference on how you look at this.
Really?
Don't you?
2015 is about when I got in.
And I think that, when you're that early, you're a veteran. And a lot of the people in crypto today, something like 70% of people in crypto today have been in it for 2 years. They haven't seen the first ICO winter that we had. Was in 2017. People aren't aware of what that did to the market. And when you're looking at Gary Gensler today, as a hodler, I assume, you're thinking about the history in more detail than somebody who's only been in there for 2 years. Is that maybe the right way to look at it?
It could be accurate. I mean, I got into it in 2015 as an academic, and unfortunately not as an investor. I mean, I bought some and played with it, but...
You're the guy who bought the pizza for 10 Bitcoins, yeah?
Absolutely not. I'm the guy that was a professor and only had a few $1,000s and was like, hey, I'll invest a little bit and you get great returns, but if you don't have money, you don't make money. So it's I was looking at it more of from a theoretical perspective and less as an investor. But the thing that's interesting about Gary Gensler, again, he's got his flaws. He's this regulation by enforcement thing is unacceptable. But he's really, really brilliant, and he's pretty consistent. So, and we certainly appreciate his deference to the CFTC on Bitcoin and potentially Ethereum as well, listing those as commodities.
Yep.
So those are positive things. I don't think we can take it and just say the SEC is total crap. They're looking out for the little guy, if you will. The fraudsters are coming after people, but they're also preventing the little guy from getting into, tokenized real estate. They're preventing a lot of hedge funds and pension funds from investing in what they want to invest in. And I know we don't think of hedge funds and pension funds as the little guy, but pension funds are typically like the teacher's retirement funds or the firefighter's pension, police officer's pension. So, those folks are counting on beating inflation at the very least in their pension fund. So they need returns greater than 8%.
Exactly.
So you have to have 5% of pretty risky allocations. I'm not a fund manager, but you can't have 1% of high risk and 99% of bonds and